What if I told you control rarely begins with arrogance? It begins with injury. With one moment that taught a person the world is not stable, people are not predictable, and freedom is expensive. After that, they stop asking how to live. They start asking how to prevent. And that is where the trouble starts. Because some people do not heal. They become architecture for fear, not evil, not domination for its own sake. Fear that got organized. Fear that learned procedure. Fear that put on a suit, picked up a clipboard, and started calling itself protection. That is why this is dangerous. The cage never introduces itself as a cage. It introduces itself as care, as caution, as responsibility, as, I'm just trying to make sure nothing bad happens. And who argues with that? Who wants to sound reckless? That is why control grows so easily when it speaks the language of safety. It sounds moral, it sounds adult, it sounds wise, but sometimes wisdom is just fear with better branding. And fear has one obsession: certainty. Because freedom has risk. Freedom means other people can choose. Freedom means a life can move without asking permission first. Freedom means trust. And trust is unbearable to a wounded mind. So the wounded mind makes a trade. It gives up freedom in exchange for control. Not because control is noble, because control feels safer than uncertainty. That is how safety becomes a cage, slowly, reasonably, with paperwork, with rules, with tighter schedules, smaller circles, narrower definitions, and constant supervision disguised as love. You can see it in ordinary life. The parent who says yes to care but no to independence. The partner who calls possession protection. The institution that keeps adding restrictions long after the original danger has passed. The person who checks, monitors, manages, limits, and explains all of it as concern. Same pattern every time. Pain enters. Fear takes over, control gets promoted, and freedom gets treated like the problem. That is the hidden corruption. Once safety becomes the highest god, everything alive starts to look suspicious. Choice becomes suspicious. Openness becomes suspicious. Movement becomes suspicious. Even joy becomes suspicious, because joy is hard to regulate. And living things cannot be fully controlled. A child cannot be fully controlled. A relationship cannot be fully controlled. A future cannot be fully controlled. So the fearful person keeps building. One more rule, one more precaution, one more reason why now is not the time. One more explanation for why freedom must wait. Every layer feels justified. Every layer sounds intelligent. Every layer can be defended. But the real motive is simple. I am trying to build a world where nothing can surprise me again. That world may feel safe, but it is not alive. Because a life with no uncertainty is not peace. It is paralysis. A relationship with no risk is not intimacy. It is management. A child with no room to explore is not being protected. That child is being contained. And contained people often look calm from the outside. That is what makes this so deceptive. Compliance looks peaceful. It looks organized. It looks successful. But compliance is often just fear winning quietly. No screaming, no visible violence. Just a human being learning to shrink in order to keep the system comfortable. That is why overprotection is not harmless. It does not merely reduce danger. It often reduces life. It drains courage first, then spontaneity, then truth, then selfhood. By the time people notice something is wrong, the cage is already invisible. No bars, no chains. Just a permanent atmosphere of caution. That is the real conflict. Not safety versus danger. Protection versus suffocation. The shield turning into a lock. Care becoming control. After injury, every person faces the same temptation. Do I build structure, or do I build a cage and call it healing? Those are not the same thing. Structure serves life. A cage serves fear. Real safety does not need to crush freedom in order to exist. Real safety creates enough stability for freedom to breathe. That is the standard. Anything else is fear with better marketing. So the rare mind move is not reckless openness. It is disciplined openness. Enough structure to stay grounded. Enough caution to learn from pain. But not so much fear that fear becomes your ruler. Because the goal is not to remove every threat from life. The goal is to remain human without becoming easy to destroy. So answer this with evidence, not emotion. Are you creating safety, or are you building a cage?